We should be live here in a second. Michael, if you don't mind, I'm going to make you host, and
Sure.
Michael, if you don't mind, I'm going to make you host, YouTube, and
You want me to start the stream?
started the stream. Stream's ready. I just want to make sure that I don't drop. Okay. I'm with it. Take everybody. All right, so bear with me a second and see if this experiment works. I'm still here, perfect. Yay. Great. Let's get started. So, big apologies for our last meeting. That was painful on my end. Hope I didn't create any major inconvenience for folks. You know, along those lines, I definitely do want to have a bit of a conversation today around basically, you know, what's next, and you know what the way I see my availability evolving over the next 3 months. But we have some big efforts in flight with working with our user groups, getting feedback, you know, kicked off. So you know, want to, you know, start there, and then you know, probably, you know, evolve that into you know, discussion around engaging the broader OpenJS initiatives, and with their user feedback in that mix. Does that sound good?
Sure.
Can y'all hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
So, do we have anybody on that is a user feedback session in cycle of effort? I have a session up in Portland with our Node PDX group next Thursday. That will be continuing efforts there. Gary, are you landing a session, you know, with meetups in Nigeria?
Yeah, so we're going to be having one at the end of this month. So
Good on.
yeah, so we actually had one earlier, some few months ago, but it turned up was really poor. So there was no much reason to give any much feedback from that end. But hopefully at the end of this month, we'll have a way better meetup session. We only had some constraints of securing a venue because of expenses and some other stuff. But end of this month is going to be way more better than previous months. And we've also been able to get some more folks around Nigeria. Recently, we got folks into new states. Previously, it was just 2, but now we have more folks on 3 other states, which is progress. So, towards the end of this month, I should be giving you feedback on how the sessions were.
Great.
Do we have an issue for that, Agiri?
Yeah, I'm going to put that up. Maybe at the end of this meeting, I'm going to put that up at the end of this meeting today.
Excellent, perfect.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I saw any issues. Someone talking about how their session works. Is there anything you want to discuss on that? Let me share. Where did I find that? Okay. That's from the Brazil meetup. I think it's not on the call
Yeah,
now.
and I think one of the key things in running the session, Gary, is being comfortable and making sure you have someone who's knowledgeable and presenting the core issues, and the latest updates. So people when they're asking questions, feel like that they're gets the discussion warmed up.
Yeah.
So,
So
going through that presentation, asking for feedback on anything that you want more information on, and looking for folks in your meetup group who might want to potentially deep dive on one of those topics, to get the the content part of the value exchange lined up.
yeah, yeah. Thank you, Dan. Okay, so I shared an issue. I don't know if you want to look at the conversations there.
Is there, is it?
Yeah, they had some feedbacks
Sure, chat.
from yeah. How do we support Node.js? How do we support your daily work? I don't know if anybody wants to give a reply on this very issue.
Okay. Good. I'll have a look a little bit later.
Okay. Okay. So
Great. Did anyone else join that? An organizer that we want to have a discussion around, or if not, I'd love to sort of transition to a discussion around OpenJS and how user feedback fits into the broader OpenJS efforts. Cool. So, Michael, I know you've been working close and getting everything set up with OpenJS, and helping support the formation of the CPC and all of the infrastructure there.
Yep.
As I'm looking at where I can dedicate my time, and likely as I transition into a bit of a different workflow in the next 6 months of team building and doing some of the organizational leadership. I see my time beginning to transition back, and time and availability being to start transitioning back to more of how I was working as a CTO of NodeSource, where I'm able to sort of connect the dots with folks at the company, but my time on the ground is probably going to continue to be challenged, and I see what the work that we've been doing with Node is really guiding and at the heart of everything that we're bringing with OpenJS. the existential problems, the meaty problems that we have to deal with are largely not Node core problems, right? Node is stable. We're addressing some of the big challenges like modules, and still have some organizational setup. But if you kind of step back from that challenge, what it really is a broader JavaScript ecosystem challenge, right? It's how all of JavaScript fits together and how we are leveraging the JavaScript platform and working through that. Then our enterprise focus area is still there's still some interesting things for us to solve and work through how organizations migrate version to version and improve around that. Our efforts led by Akvin Nasri, really moving forward there. I see the biggest opportunities for us to listen to the ecosystem and improve the ecosystem, more being actually kind of JavaScript ecosystem challenges than specifically Node.js. I know that's a bit heretical coming from me, but that's what I've been saying.
Yeah, so are you suggesting something specific, like saying, should we try and move the user feedback team to be to be under the CPC OpenJS as opposed to the Node.js organization, or?
I don't know that it has to be a move or a change, but I do think that is the biggest challenges exist there, and we should be serving the needs of the ecosystem most of all. And what we've built here is a challenge that when I work with folks in TC39, for example, one of their biggest challenges is how do they get enough community feedback so standards processes ultimately serving that use case and that need.
Yeah, I don't.
So I'm not proposing anything. I'm
okay.
sharing my thoughts,
Sure.
but not actually attempting to put a proposal forth.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I think that Node and JavaScript are all intertwined, right? So I don't disagree that it doesn't the work that this team would look at in terms of engaging end users and so forth doesn't need to be like, oh well, is it related to Node? No, okay, we're not interested. It certainly can be. So I don't think there's any issue with trying to come forward with, hey, here's another area like, okay, standards feedback that this team could be involved in and try and champion something. That just be a matter of what people come up with and think is important, and then we can figure out how to help support that. Right,
and just sharing some of the things that I'm working with, and some of the needs at a more organizational level rather than a personal level. As I work with various teams and get folks involved, it is that broader standard story. If we're working towards getting Node more aligned with standards efforts, that is something that I can draw from multiple teams around that sort of an effort. Whereas just specifically Node, and it's a lot more challenging for me to, we need to, build the business case for, this, that, and the other business problem, because honestly, Node is the incompatibility, interoperability.
Yeah, certainly standards is one that has been talked about relatively, I guess, a fair amount in terms of the OpenJSF. And I think there might even be an issue already, if I remember. I think I remember correctly that there's an issue open to basically open a repo under the OpenJSF organization to start discussing that and to start figuring out how to push that forward.
Great.
So there's a bunch, there's a good number of aspects on that, and I don't know if that's like overlaps somehow with the user feedback side of things in your thinking, or it's just something else that you think is interesting. But that's definitely starting up, and I mean there was a repo in the Node organization as well, but it is something where standardization generally is not just Node; it's across other things. So doing it the JSF definitely makes sense to me.
Yeah, on my end, I have at most, one activity area where I can be focusing on. I can't split myself, like I have in the past, between user feedback and mentorship, and honestly, over the with the dual responsibility, community committee and user feedback. That's been almost pushing me to my limits. So I will have to eventually choose where which one I spend my time. But I honestly don't think there's anything holding us back in this group and beginning to form the hypothesis and work through the big picture. One thing I love about this current iteration that we're evolving through with engaging our meetup groups is that process and effort of coordinating content and activity across the meetup groups is something that I would like to see nurtured, and I'm not sure user feedback is necessarily the long-term best place for that nurturing.
Okay, I'm not quite sure I understand that aspect. Where do you think it would be?
Again, not proposing a solution.
Sure. I'm just don't know where. Like I'm off the top of my head. I don't know what other part of the project it would fit better on.
I think that's the point. Yeah, no, I think that's the point. That there currently isn't any other area that we're serving that, and we've built something with general user feedback there that I think is probably has an importance that extends beyond just user feedback. That I'd love to see nurtured and continued. And that one of the potential solutions could be a committee inside the CPC that's working with the meetup groups, right? So someone taking on and beginning to focus specifically on meetup groups and coordinating across that.
Right. Okay. There was now that you mentioned that, there was under the community committees an effort, I think, to start something called outreach.
Right.
So if I understand what you're saying is like, okay, user feedback is one reason to go out and have a link with the
Outreach, right?
with
Yep.
the user groups, but there's others. So
There's others, right?
Based on that, Adam also planned on reaching out because they tried creating a Meetup.com account for meetup organizers that are wishing to get into outreach initiative. That has already
Mm-hmm.
been done. So I actually I opened an issue earlier on some months ago requesting that how do we link the initiative from outreach on the user feedback group. I don't know if anybody had the time to look at it, but it's been an ongoing discussion that I've also not been able to get back to. But I'm going to look for the link now and share. But the idea is this: that how can we support meetup groups um trying to um build around the Node.js community, trying meetup organizers that are not probably well funded, but to
Right.
enable run these events, run feedback sessions, get more people and understand the community better, like creating like a community bridge between users that
Right.
are not necessarily part of the like not necessarily collaborators and such, but people making use of Node.js because they are part of the community one way or the other. Um, so the idea is how do we empower them? How do we create the bridge between the Node.js user feedback session? How do we give them the informations that we have, and how do we help the outreach initiative achieve the same common goal rather than duplicating efforts?
Right.
right, and I think I remember discussion user feedback. I think I thought I commented is that like basically, I think what I just said a minute earlier, which is like a user feedback session is just one of the possible content choices
Yeah,
for every
right.
given instance of the meeting. So I do agree with the concept that like it's a sort of different, broader effort to try and say like if we want to help build meetups, and the user feedback sessions sort of fit into that, and that like, oh, okay, if those are well established, then it's good to say like one of the rotating contents, content options that you might want to use is this user feedback part.
Right.
So
Right.
yeah,
And I think
go ahead.
and I think that it may if we open the aperture of that a little bit better, a little bit, it would provide opportunities where those meetups could say, all right, this month we're going to do Node.js user feedback, but like there are some stage 3 specs in JavaScript that are coming in the coming months as well. That's interesting to our community. So let's bring in folks that are experts, subject matter experts around that, or share content together that includes some of that.
Okay, so from my Dalton's reply, one outreach initiative would help a group start run a general ongoing Node.js meeting and choice for any given instance of that meeting. So there is not necessarily an overlap. Yeah, I don't know. Is there like if we are trying to look at the broader picture of okay bringing in the user feedback group to the OpenJS Foundation itself, the OpenJS Foundation is a very very broad community, and I don't know if anybody will also want to dedicate their time like we'll do at this moment from all those other communities to handle their feedback sessions and getting back to them. I don't really know if probably we need to like redefine how Node.js user feedback session works, or how user feedback session works in general, like creating a context around how we want to implement user feedback session. I don't know if that
Right.
makes
So
sense.
I'm not sure we need to do anything in a rush because the OpenJS
Sure.
is bootstrapping, same as the CPC. I think over time we'll see how much interest, like definitely, one of the things I think we'll want to do is to kind of make sure that we level set so everybody across the organizations, the OpenJS organizations, kind of understands the different things the Node project has done that have worked, not worked, whatever.
Right.
Share some of that. And I think coming out of that, we'll see how much interest there is into like, hey, we want to do the same thing. So can we, take what we've done and use it as a pattern? Or is it like, well, wait a sec, no, it makes sense to all collaborate on this together or whatever. But I suspect, like in my mind, I think sort of at least for the next little while, letting that just sort of be figured out organically is the best way to go at it.
I agree.
So it's like keep doing what we're doing. Listen to what's going on over there. I'll be involved. Joe will be involved. And like if we start to see people saying, "Hey, we need to do, user feedback at the open, for some other projects or whatever," we'll definitely connect the dots and we can figure out at that point what makes the most sense.
Right.
Makes sense.
Great. Well, that's kind of where my head's at, and it sounds like we're broadly aligned in doing that and in that direction. So that's how I'm generally going to be approaching working through whatever transition. I don't know what the shape of my transition will actually look like. I'm kind of deep in the organizational and logistical planning of that and budgetary planning of that right now. So I don't know what that will look like, but do have quite a number of folks that want to get more involved in Node and in JavaScript community and open source in general. So part of what I'm putting in place is supporting those interests and making that make sense for our business, where we're much more a technology user than commercializer directly, but we value the ability to innovate and serve the needs of our customers, and we're also developers that participate in these ecosystems, and it's important for us to stay involved.
Right. So I guess on the user feedback session, there's some going. I wonder if we need to, like, maybe not today, but do we need to do kind of a review on, like, do we have all the pieces in place that we need to do and it's just a matter of letting them execute now? Or is it like kind of what are our next steps on that front, I think would be good.
Yeah, I think that is a key next step that we should do. I'm concerned that my dropping last week's meeting at the last minute, potentially we had a bunch of folks that were beginning to come active on our meetup groups, and then missing a meeting like that often will really hurt momentum. But I think that is the right next step to make sure that all of that we successfully execute on this batch of meetups and get that outside of
Yep.
It worked for Deshaun and James, but
yep.
We're old hat, and we can basically walk into any situation
Yep.
around Node and kind of make it work.
Yeah, no, definitely, and see if we've got like the deck that is it working for the other teams, and maybe what the next content will be in terms of questions and stuff. I guess the other major thing is surveys and so forth. I forget where we're at on some of those.
Right. Well, that's something that I think is in part impacted by the state of the foundation's organizational capabilities. And honestly, with
are we actually waiting for anything on the foundation side? Like I'm not aware of us having asked them to say, can we run a survey and that being an issue? If it is, trying to help fix that, but I don't know that that's the case.
No, I wouldn't characterize it as being blocked by that. The efforts around landing the surveys in flight stopped not at the foundation level, but at individuals in the project being able to sort of drive the survey content to a done state. And at that point, because the foundation team really can't do the thing until they've got a thing to go do.
We need a list of questions, so I guess we should review. I mean, on that front, it's probably to review the list we were working on, and either ping the teams that we're asking for them to say, is something going to be coming, or should we drop it off the list, right?
And Joe's done that, and basically at this point, I would say that we'd have to pull the trigger on characterizing it as we didn't get the response that we needed to say that we could move forward.
Okay, because I know there were some other mentions of surveys and stuff, but yeah, if basically if we're at the point where we think we don't have a list of surveys to be requested, then that's that's fine. I just wanted to make sure that from our perspective we're on top of that, and it sounds like if there's all stalled, then we are. So
right, yeah. And Joe is the driver on that. If we wanted to sort of reinitiate that, I think we would need to potentially find a new driver for or see if Joe's available. But I know he's taking on a lot of responsibility with the CPC.
Mm-hmm. But it doesn't sound like that's an issue, right? So it's just the issue. We're not it should be a pull, so people should be pulling us for these surveys, and if that's not the case, then it's okay,
right? Yep.
There's not enough time for us to do that. I was just I'm just thinking in terms of our regular agenda, you'd think surveys, the user feedback, and the enterprise feedback group is kind of the three things we should just review to say, moving forward, things we need to do as this team, or are things good?
Right. And I'll just share my thoughts on surveys moving forward. The survey that we did successfully had a dedicated driver to it. That happened to be you, Michael.
Yes, understood. Yep. And that's what we
was able to, right? And so really managing expectations that when someone comes in and asks for a survey, that they're able to move that all the way, push it all the way through, that they aren't able to come to us and just sort of hand off a survey and have it be done on their behalf. Is my sort of coalesced understanding of and kind of the retro of what's possible, and that leads me to what does that mean in the new OpenJS world, right?
Right, that's probably going to be similar as well, right? Like, it's that if any of the other projects, non-node ones are interested in surveys, I think they should be able to get the same thing. But it's really like you said, that the requester needs to come and say, here's a list of questions, and then we could do a little bit of coordination in terms of helping to link to the foundation resources, as well as providing a home for the results, right?
Right. Yeah, and, that clearinghouse is really important, right? The neutral clearinghouse is something that is something that community members need to, if they're going to put in that effort, right? Having that resource be open and available to the community, that's key.
Yeah. So basically, the sort of, other than the questions, I think that the user feedback team could help with the sort of process flow and where things go, are always going to be like need to be provided, and maybe tweaked, but
yes, what I have seen in the last couple of months, so I've seen a lot of efforts around this, and we are stuck actually in the how many questions actually we are going to have it. So usually the people who are asking for a survey, usually they have only a couple of questions, and then that's it. We are stuck with those. Looks like from my point of view, we didn't figure it out in some others, and we even if Joe was trying really hard to get some other questions, we weren't too successful in those. I'm not sure if it was a communication problem, but what we know, we are having this agenda for a couple of weeks from now, and we need to do something about it. So, or just say we can drop it, or we are here with these 15 questions on this survey, and we can go or we can drop it.
Yeah, are you saying they're still back and forth on the questions?
Yes. So if I remember exactly, so I think Joe was having like 15 questions already, if I'm not mistaken. I know he's traveling, so probably he can update that more on the next meetings. But
yeah, no, I think next time we have Joe, we should ask.
Agree.
Ask where he's at on all those things. So
yeah. And talking about the next time, it's an enterprise meeting on June 20 or not? I didn't see any issue open, and I think Ahmad also is traveling to Berlin, but if it's an enterprise meeting on June 20, it's already late for that, I think.
Maybe you can follow up. Maybe if you can follow up with Ahmed on that, that would be good.
Okay.
Yeah, he's changing. He just changed roles and is starting as CTO at NPM. I imagine he will be undergoing some of the same challenges that I'm having now with the evolving priorities of the time. But I also think that it fits his interest area and what he's working on.
Yep.
But good call out, June 20th as that meeting. If that hasn't been set up yet, it's probably worth flagging and evaluating whether we should be looking to reschedule.
Okay. I will ping anyway, Ahmed, and see what is going on. So.
Thank you, Mihai. That's Amazing.
Yep.
Appreciate it. Great. So let's. I'll have the meetup next week and be able to share out the experiences of another user feedback session with the Portland team. And with that, we can come back, do the content review, and it's probably worth rallying both Joe and Ahmed at the next session to continue this discussion and begin planning the next stages. Working with folks in OpenJS and the CPC to see when and if there's interest in us collaborating on some broader scoped things, and seeing how we can continue to nurture through outreach and other initiatives engagement with our meetup organizers. I think that's a great use of our time in general as enablers to the foundation.
Okay.
Dan, do you have any issue on Portland meetup?
Do I have an issue on the Portland meetup?
Yeah.
I don't think so. Yeah.
Now. Probably
I was asking if you have an issue open because
so doing what we ask other people to do would probably be good, right?
Would probably be good, right? Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, so because it was one on May 13th.
I think Ben created an issue though, didn't he?
Yes, so that was one. Again, this is a second one, right?
Oh no, this is. I think we may have shifted the date, but it's it's the same meetup with Ben. This is the instance that we're shooting for.
Then why don't you guys update that title? I mean,
Right on. Good call. And sort of self-encouragement. Make sure that we are leveraging the issue throughout as we go through. Right. Part of the premise is to use the issue as the central area where we're driving that feedback.
okay.
Thanks for the call
out. When just give a ping when you are in Portland.
I will be in Portland probably for the meetup and then off. I'd hope to extend my stay through Friday, but we actually have some family visiting from overseas that they're only going to be there that Friday. So I haven't figured out whether I'm coming back on Thursday evening or first thing on Friday, but I unfortunately won't be lingering too long.
Okay, then you don't have too much time. Yeah, definitely Friday it's a no for me. So yeah, but yeah, probably we can talk a little bit offline. So.
Great. You think you'd be able to join us? Are you in the States now?
I do have something on 20, so unfortunately I'm sorry, on 13. So we are talking about 13, the June 13,
right.
June 13 and 14. Yeah.
Right, Thursday, June 13th.
Yeah, so for the boys is the last day of school, and I did volunteer schools a lot. So, but I'll see. I'll try to work around a little bit.
Cool. Yeah. Family first, please. Yeah. Don't worry about that. But it'd be nice to see each other, spend some time together. But yeah, I will only be basically there for the meetup, and I'll probably disappear after that.
Okay.
Great. Well, thanks everybody. Any other thoughts or final items of discussion that we want to go into?
I don't have anything else.
All right. Well, with that, we'll wrap up for the day, and see you all in 2 weeks.
Talk to y'all later. Bye.
Okay. Thank you. Bye.
Thanks a lot. Bye.
Bye.